actors say they don't like to watch their own work.
Yeah.
Why don't you like to watch your own work?
I think, I don't know, it's difficult to explain. I think we all have our different reasons. For me, it's always a little bit of a thing of, when it's done, it's done. So when you finish your work, you usually your brain's on to the next project that you're doing, and so you want to focus on what's coming then. And sometimes what happens is when you start watching your work, you become too critical of things, and it brings back good memories, brings back bad memories, whatever it is. But I find it's a little bit of too much of a narcissistic pursuit for me to watch myself. I don't really get any satisfaction from it. Sometimes you watch it just to see if you've pitched it right.
Yeah.
Because you gotta know if you pitched the character, if it came out the way you had envisioned it in your head, and if it does, then you're like, okay, that's enough. I need to know, and I can move on to the next thing. But I know actors that can't wait to see themselves on screen and love it. I don't really get that much of a kick out of it, and I tend to like to move on to the next thing and see what happens there.
So you won't be watching this video interview then?
I will see, just to see how good you guys are.
Depends whether we ask you anything particularly bad later on.
All right, that's me going next.
How was your first day on set on 24? You can't tell us about where you were or what you were doing exactly, but the experience, the crew, the people you were working with.
Oh, that was it was intense. I can tell you this much. I was in first scene up all the way to last scene, so I had everything in that day.
Oh, okay.
It was a full day for me, and that was really the way I like it, And I didn't. Obviously, it's always very daunting to come on a show that's already established and come into the not the middle of it, but come into it as it's already been rolling. So even because I'm not in it from the first episode. So what happens is everything's already established. The relationships on set are already established, and especially with 24, where the crew's been doing it for 8 years now.
Yeah.
And so it was an amazing feeling for me because I really got to see how tight they were, how well they worked as a crew. I mean, these guys have been working together, and you can tell. The DP Rodney's and Rodney Chambers is absolutely amazing, as well as Guy at the camera, and they're a really, really efficient group of people, and they're really likable. I thought it was really nice. I had a very good experience my first day. It was very intense, and I kind of just stayed in my own space. But I have a funny story to tell on the first day, because the first AD, her name's Nicole, and I didn't know this at the time. She seemed like a very lovely lady, and she's also very intense. And so towards the end of the day, it was the middle of the night now, and she was working the whole time with this big old stick that she had. And at some stage, I just had enough of looking at her leaning on that big stick, so I just kicked it out from under her, and didn't know, because I don't really know her reputation. Apparently she's quite a forceful, which I now know, of course, a very forceful reputation. And I just kicked the stick from underneath her, and I just saw the whole video village, and everybody was just in tears laughing about it, because they couldn't believe that I did that. And of course I had no clue who she was really, or how intense she was, and I just thought that's enough of that. And
so she didn't find it funny herself?
She found it so funny,
oh, right.
and we became very good friends, through the remainder, and got on really, really well. But it started at that moment because I just thought she was taking herself just a little bit too serious.
Oh, that's a good story.
So, like you just said about your first day on set, what did you think of the new set? Because obviously there's a new CTU.
I think it's really impressive. When you work on other TV shows and then you come to 24, you see the kind of money that they have. You see what they can do as opposed to other shows, because it's been so successful, and it's got such a huge fan base. I mean, the fan base for 24 is amazing. Worldwide, it absolutely amazing. And so you immediately see the money, see how good it looks, what they can do, the different shots they can do, how many cranes they can get, and how many crane shots they can have, and you're just in awe of it. And it is almost like, I remember feeling this as if I'm on a movie set rather than TV. It feels much more like a movie set in terms of what they can afford and how much money they pump into it. And, So that is very exciting.
Is it almost intimidating then, coming onto a set like that, where it is so big?
I guess if you haven't done that before, it probably could be. I think, you know, it just depends on how you are.
Yeah.
For me personally, I look at everything just as a job, and so it doesn't really intimidate me so much because it's just a gig, you know. But when it's all done, you do kind of go and become a little child and go, that was really fun, you know.
You've because you worked on Spooks in the UK, right?
I did, yes.
And I guess that's probably, off the top of my head, the closest equivalent I can think of to 24 that we've got in the UK. So the feel of filming that was very different to being on 24 set.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's because of things like money and the
Mainly.
family aspect, the long running kind of
Mainly.
structure.
I wouldn't want to make a judgment
Sure,
any
yeah.
way because I didn't have a run at Spooks in any way. And I think it's mainly down to money. You know. 24 is worldwide. Everybody in the world knows the show. Everybody in the world sees it. And Spooks is probably only seen in America, and BBC America, and in the UK, and it has a much smaller following, and therefore the money that they can get and receive isn't anywhere as near as that.
So, again, I suppose it could be potentially a spoiler. If
Potentially.
we don't do spoilers. You're playing a terrorist.
I didn't say
Oh,
that.
you didn't say that?
No,
Okay, you're playing a bad guy.
I didn't say that.
It's very good.
Yeah. Okay, you're playing that someone's not working for CTU.
I didn't say that.
We're not going to get much more.
No.
Excellent stuff.
So, what does the future hold for you then?
Right now, I am about to go back to Europe towards the end of this month to shoot a movie called Unknown White Male. It's a Warner Brothers movie that's filming in Berlin.
Right.
So yes, and I'm very much looking forward to that because obviously I spent a huge portion of my life in Germany, and being able to go back there and work there is something that I've really wanted to do for some time because I grew up there, so I never had a chance to work there, and now to go back and do a movie there and to do a big movie, a big budget movie is very exciting.
Yeah. Talking a little bit more about 24. How did you find the real-time aspect? Because obviously this will be the first time, and there's no show like it. Every minute is every minute. How did you find that?
I found it really good. Really, really good because you have to kind of just be open and not have too many preconceived ideas because you don't know where your character is really going from one point to the next because the writers are figuring out as they speak.
Yeah.
They don't know, and you don't know anything they don't know. So you kind of have to just be open, and you have to play really what's on the page and what you get, and play that moment. And a lot of people are quite uncomfortable with that. I found that quite liberating. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and like that because it takes a lot of the work away. You know, you don't.
Yeah.
Would you say there's a case of when you get your scripts that you're not totally aware of your character's intentions until maybe later on, and therefore you can't build your character as a picture? It's kind of got to evolve as you find out.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I think you always have to know your intentions, otherwise you can't play a scene. So you have to know what your intention is within that scene that you're playing. Always. Otherwise, it's going to be quite wishy-washy, and you won't know. So you have to make a choice, whether it's the right choice or the wrong choice. The director, the producer, and the creators of the show will tell you that.
Yeah.
And they will say, no, actually, we need you to make a different choice here.
Right.
So that's not really a problem. But you always have to know your intentions. You have to be very aware of that before you set on set, what your intention is in that particular scene and what you need to know. What we call your super objective is you don't really know necessarily. So that you have to let that go because sometimes you know, sometimes it's very clear, and sometimes it isn't. So again, I find that liberating.